With Battlefield 2042 deviating from the series' long-time use of soldier classes, we are now left with a bunch of named specialists in its place, each with their own roles and abilities. Which begs the question, who are the best? Which have the most useful abilities for earning score? What about pushing or holding an objective? G'day there once again viewers, this is your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're going to be putting the launch specialists of Battlefield 2042 into a tier list. So guys, before we get stuck right in, we need to go over a couple of housekeeping items first. Firstly, this is a tier list based on the performance of the specialists as of the 23rd of the 11th, 2021. As new specialists get added with upcoming seasons of content, or as specialists get buffed or nerfed with the live service of the game, this list will almost certainly be changed over time, and you guys can expect more videos from me covering those said changes in the long run. But in addition to that, I want to outline a criteria for how this list is built, because I get it, everyone has their favorite specialist in the game that fits their certain playstyle, and in turn, I'm going to be shitting on a couple of your guys' favorites today. So the point of the criteria here is to give the list some context so you guys understand the why behind the decisions that I've made so far with this tier list. So here's the criteria. Number 1, the capabilities of the specialists themselves. How powerful are their unique perks and abilities, and are there any synergies that allow you to do some pretty unique stuff with that specialist? Number 2, the effort to reward ratio. How much effort needs to go into using the abilities of the specialist in question? Do they need to babysit their tools? Does it take them out of the fight entirely? And number 3, the versatility of the specialist. How many situations can the specialist be useful in? How many times is there a specialist that would simply perform better in the same environment? That there is essentially the reasoning behind the decisions that we're going to be making today, gang. So if you see one of your main specialists down the bottom, please don't take it to heart. If you have fun playing them, all power to you. This is just how I rank them based on this criteria right now. I would love to hear your personal tier list for the specialists in the comment section down below once you get to the end of the video. But anyway, let's start off with E tier. E tier represents the specialists that unfortunately sport abilities that are just so incredibly lackluster right now. They have a clear role on the battlefield, but the abilities themselves just don't sport the oomph factor to make them worth running 99% of the time, which makes them hard to justify running beyond the, standard respawning onto them as a, oh, I need this just for a moment basis. In E tier, we have the recon specialist, Nav and Rao. And oof, I can feel the anger already. Alright, allow me to explain, gang. There is no denying that Rao here is incredibly powerful at taking out one of the biggest threats in the game right now. Helicopters. His hacking ability allows him to hack into enemy vehicles and disable their weaponry and countermeasures for a good few seconds, which, yes, includes aircraft flares. So if you find yourself going against one of the most annoying Nightbird pilots you've ever faced, switching to Rao and taking a lock-on launcher is going to be one of the best counters possible to that pilot. But that's kind of where his usefulness stops. His hacking ability takes an extremely long time to activate, which keeps you from doing anything else like, say, defending yourself from opponents or providing support to allies with another tool. It's also incredibly finicky to use, and the spotting effect it has on an infantry player when you kill a hacked soldier only lasts for a short amount of time after the kill, to the point where you put in so much effort for such little reward. Not to mention that the range in which it works on aircraft is also pretty limited, so it's easy for a decent pilot to just simply, move away from you to stop the effect, wait till you're distracted by, the regular combat on the ground, and simply come back to ruin you. I think some buffs need to come to Rao before I can recommend playing him over others regularly. But okay, that's E tier done and dusted. Not too bad, only one specialist, that's a good sign. But now we move on to D tier. Now these are the specialists whose playstyles revolve around a couple of abilities that succeed in very limited situations, or whose abilities just don't quite have a lot of influence on the battlefield based on how the game currently flows. In D tier, we have Dozer and Boris. Let me explain. Dozer was definitely the easier of the two to put in this tier, and that's unfortunately thanks to his main ability, the ballistic shield. Now, I'll be the first to admit that there's a timely deployment of serotonin to my brain every time I whip this thing out and start slowly walking up to a panicking enemy as they are backed against the walls screaming in tactical. But in saying that, I only find the shield good at closing those distances in places where you can control the angles of engagement, places like buildings or places with uneven terrain. A lot of the maps in Battlefield 2042 to sport wide open vistas, which means that treading slowly through the environment, taking shots from a certain direction, is just going to leave you open to about 15 other flanks. It can be fun, but it just isn't a great pick a lot of the time. In saying that, his explosive damage resistance is incredibly strong in a game where there's a lot of explosions going around, which is what puts him above E tier currently. Now, good old Boris is next here, and this one was a tough one for me. Everything about Boris revolves entirely around his sentry gun, and under the right circumstances, this thing can be a true nuisance to the enemies. It even spots its targets for you, which allows you to focus fire down on the target with the turret for some pretty juicy time to kills. The issue here is that this makes Boris's playstyle only really fitting in stagnant situations where you can post up, or in offensive situations where you can put the turret in areas with wide lines of sight. In other words, it can only really have a huge impact in breakthrough games, and it also demands that you stand near it and babysit it for the best results. Considering that the turret also shows up as a highlighted target on the HUD of its target, it kind of makes it an easy target to focus fire. It's also incredibly easy to kill, and if you have to be standing near it to make it, half decent at doing its job, then by proximity you may as well become a target as well. And that's D tier behind us. It's time we move on to the specialists that fit in right down the middle, your average Andys on the battlefield, the C tier. Now, I have to admit, C tier is only populated by one specialist right now, and I have to admit that this specialist is only here for one reason, that being the current state of the proximity sensor and how powerful it is. And I think you guys all know who I'm talking about here. In C tier, we have our local bushwookie and good friend Casper. So I feel Casper is a little unfairly treated in the game's meta right now because he does have a pretty awesome gadget, all things considered. The drone he gets access to is one of the most lucrative XP farming tools in the game right now, scoring you an obscene amount of spotting experience and assist experience just for merely looking in the general direction of enemy contacts. It's a great asset to the team, but here's the thing. It's completely replaced by how powerful the proximity sensors are right now. Casper's drone requires the user to be taken away from any kind of combat roles to be effective, whereas the proximity sensors are completely autonomous, and you can plaster them everywhere if you're sitting on an ammo pack. You can only have one Casper drone up at a time. In saying that though, the drone does let you do things in the game that is sure to piss off any camping tanker.
Drone deployed! Charge armed and ready!
Yeah, that right there is reason enough to use this specialist at times. So yeah, a strong C tier for Casper right now. He'd even maybe move up to B tier if proximity sensors weren't as powerful as they are now. But as you move on from C tier, we start to get to the pointy end of the stick at B tier. This is where things start to get a touch more exciting. These are the specialists that, to me, start to bring some pretty competitive abilities to the battlefield that are equally unique and powerful. They aren't going to be the best for every situation, but they are going to start getting to the point where you can honestly take them into most battles and find a way to make use of their abilities somehow. In B tier, we have McKay and the battlefield grandma herself, Falk. And starting off with Mr. Spider-Man of the Battlefield universe himself, McKay is without a doubt the specialist in this game for traversing vertical obstacles and scoring some of the best flanking opportunities out there. See a building with a bunch of enemies on the roof? Scale the wall where they weren't expecting it and go to town. Need to cross an open street? Use your grapple as a means to slingshot yourself across. There are lots of ways in which McKay's grapple hook can be used in different situations, but he really comes into his own on the Manifest map among the shipping containers. I'm convinced it's legit where this specialist was born to be abused, and the flanks you can go on with him in that area are nothing short of incredible. His nimble trait also makes him fantastic at rounding corners and playing aggressively, so even in general combat, he performs pretty well. Oh, and C5 shenanigans with him are just amazing too. But alright, Battle Grandma. Falk is the first of the two official medics in the game that can revive anyone on the battlefield, and is not just limited to reviving her own squad members. That alone punches Falk up the list, especially in breakthrough mode, where you'll have no shortage of bodies that can be saved at any given time. But in addition to that, her revives will return downed allies back to full health, which can be great in those high-octane situations. Now, of course, she also has the S21 Surrep pistol in tow, which lets her fire off healing syringes at distance to allies who need them. I know that a lot of people don't necessarily find this to be too useful an ability, but I actually really like it. It gives you the range to assist an ally when they're outside of medpack range and it's a bit too dangerous to go and give them one. It just generally expands your reach as a supportive player. Falk I find to be a really powerful specialist at this stage and one worth taking into a lot of firefights. So those were a couple of really honorable mentions in B tier, but now we are here at A tier. Here we are simply approaching the meta, guys. These are the specialists that to me are well and truly the specialists that sport the widest use cases, and while their abilities in some cases might not be the most powerful, they have allowed me to traverse spaces that I wouldn't have been able to before, or have abilities that are the core reason behind me surviving some engagements. Here we have Irish, Jisoo Pike, and Sundance. And we'll start off with good old Irish here. Beyond him being a true GOAT from the good old Battlefield 4 days, this man also carries the most universally applicable abilities available in the game right now. The deployable cover and the quote-unquote trophy sentinel system that shoots down explosives. Now, I remember when I first saw Irish as a reveal, and I kind of thought to myself, that looks a touch underwhelming if I'm being honest. I don't see that cover being too useful on the battlefield, and boy was I wrong. That deployable cover has allowed me to survive in situations or turn engagements in my favor that I simply had no right to. It's great for fortifying capture points or creating checkpoints for advancing allies. You can even use it in combination with map assets to create expanded areas of cover for larger team pushes. Plus, throw in Irish's veteran perk that allows him to start with some armor on a spawn and score additional bonuses from downed enemies. He's a true force to be reckoned with on the battlefield. And alright, Jisoo Pike. The most controversial specialist to have been added to the game so far, I reckon. And the source of this controversy comes from her EGM scanner, which will, for those who are unaware, highlight enemies in pulses for a short period of time, even if they are behind cover or out of your direct line of sight. It essentially is a pulsing wall hack. Now, the amount of maps that have you fighting in smaller, tight-knit environments are limited, which is where you would expect an ability like this to perform the strongest. And it does, without a doubt, but it's also very useful in an outdoor setting. It can't be understated. There's a lot of dense foliage and positions that offer cover in Battlefield 2042, and its uses in those environments to work out exact enemy counts, their position, and even which of the bunch seem to be paying the most amount of attention is a huge asset to have. It's not anywhere near as powerful as the initial reveal trailer for Pike alluded it being. But it would be, I think, a bit silly to downplay the power level that's at play here. If you also end up taking some random fire from a sniper in the open as well, there goes the guessing game of figuring out where those came from thanks to her passive trait. She's an all-around strong performer at this point and a great foot soldier. And then there's good old Sundance. Sundance is arguably the poster child for this game. They were the very first specialist we laid our eyes on in the reveal trailer. Sundance's primary party piece is of course the wingsuit, and man, does it just allow for some unrivaled amounts of freedom on the battlefield. You'll easily outrun some of the vehicles in this game when it comes to making pace and distance, and if you learn the nuances for it, you can really do a whole bunch of stuff with it. So from a sheer movement perspective alone, Sundance is easily one of the more fun specialists in the game to run right now. But the grenades also can't be ignored. The scatter grenades in particular I have used on multiple occasions to turn an enemy position into a life-sized popcorn demonstration, and lock-on grenades can also be great at sending strongly worded suggestions towards enemy vehicles and their chosen parking locations. Not to mention that these grenades regenerate over time, so you can take proximity sensors while not sacrificing your damage potency. Sundance is a great fun specialist and definitely worth running. And that's your A tier, but the more observant of you will notice that we have one more specialist still sitting here untiered. What about Mr. Angel, I hear you all asking? Well, let's just say there's always one standout, one true outlier that really sets the bar and just sets the standard going forward. And Angel, as he currently stands, is that specialist. Ladies and gentlemen, in S tier, we have Angel. Angel really has it all, man. Access to a special ammo pack that distributes armor to allies, the ability to revive all allies on the battlefield, all the while outfitting them with a fully replenished armor pool as well, and the ability to call in a loadout crate that lets players restock on all of their gear or choose a new loadout based on the evolving situation. Angel is nothing short of the lifeblood of a successful team right now. Throw health back into your universal gear slot for good measure, and Angel is the only specialist in the game right now that can potentially heal an ally back up to full health and give them a full armor set and replan their ammunition in one swift movement. He is the king of support in this game right now. Throw on proximity sensors and he can achieve every form of support possible in one kit minus repairing vehicles. Don't overlook this character. He is an absolute machine and the true lifeblood of a force. And guys, with all that said, that is going to be where we wrap up today's tier list of the Battlefield 2042 specialists as they currently stand at launch. If you guys enjoyed today's video, be sure to backhand the like button, and as I said before, leave a comment down below telling me where you think the Battlefield 2042 specialists stand on this tier list. Do you agree with me? Disagree? I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. If you guys are new to the channel and you enjoyed the content, consider hitting the subscribe button for more content just in general coming from me. It's going to be great in the long run. And as always, if you want to support me further, check out my membership link down below and check out all my other social medias that are also linked. I promise you some good stuff goes up there as well. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.